multiclassing. So how to actually correctly multiclass in Baldur's Gate 3. So this video here, everyone, is a guide how to generally conceptualize multiclassing. Right? What levels, what are some general good tips how to multiclass, and how you can do it when you're leveling up. So if you like this video, guys, please subscribe, press that like button, and next week, probably next week, I will do the whole multiclass tier list. So let's get started. As I said earlier in this video, I'm gonna give you some of my best multiclass or whatever, right? But I'm more so I'll talk about the levels, the concepts, and some basic ideas how to multiclass. And I do that because, like I said by most of my videos, right? I want to give you the tools, right? And then manage by yourself, you know what I mean? So I rather want to tell okay, this is when I multiclass as a paladin, you know what I mean? And then you can do whatever you want, right? Of course, there are some multiclass for paladin that are obviously way better, but I'd rather tell you how, again, when should I multiclass as a paladin, and then we can go into okay, what's the best of. So the first question we have to ask ourselves, right, is should you multiclass? First of all, right, I think it comes with a caveat. You can, of course, respec in this game quite easily for $100, right? And for that reason, I think that especially, later in the video, that you have different levels where certain classes get way better. So you reach that level, and then you multiclass after that, you definitely have more a min-max path through the game, which, I mean, because you can so easily respec, right, it's quite useful. But otherwise, there's a lot of traps with multiclass. I would say this thing in this game, right? It's very easy to get a bunch of passives on 1 or 2 levels in this game. So I think in older D&D games, so on, it was definitely not very worthwhile multiclassing. It depends, of course, who the actual min-max, whatever, right? But in this game, I think, yeah, honestly, I don't think you should multiclass. It's willy-nilly, of course. But from a general standpoint, a lot of the stuff you want to get is in the early levels, right? You get a lot of benefits, basically, from 1 or 2 levels into it. But I think rather so, let me try to explain this in, right? I think a lot of people are going to look at multiclassing as, oh, what is the best multiclass? What is the best build? Oh, I should be 11-1 or this thing, or 7-5 and 6-6, or 3-3-3, 3-2, or whatever. And all this bullshit, right? But the truth is, when it comes to multiclassing, or actually Baldur's Gate 3, I think in general, multiclass should be more about what level you are at. I'll explain more in this video, details, while I'm thinking about it. But, generally speaking, I think in this game you should multiclass, but I think you shouldn't do it necessarily at max level, okay? What I mean by that is that, for example, if you're playing a fighter or a paladin, whatever, level 5 is massive. You get so much benefit at level 5. But after that, it's not so much better being level 6 as a fighter. But level 12 fighter is good. See what I mean? So it's we should multiclass at 5, right? 5, 1, 2, and so on. And then you can always respec, right? If you're a spellcaster, it is very, very potent when you get your level 3 spells and even more level 4 spells, right? So those levels, not multiclassing, those levels, very powerful. But now when you have your level 4 spell, well, now you can probably multiclass, right? Because, well, yeah, it's the next level, similar to the early level of fighters, not very powerful, right? So now it's I get my level 4 spell. Now if I multiclass into another spellcaster, I get way more benefit, right? So for me, when I look at multiclassing, there are 2 different ways. Right? I look at, again, perfect, I am min-maxing, max level 12, I want to do different specs and so on, right? That's one way of multiclassing. But I think more so from a playthrough, right? You should think at what levels should I multiclass at, and of course what combos, right? Obviously. Because it's you're not going to be level 12 that long, right? So I think it's more important to think about when are we doing the multiclass, right? Much more so. But then lastly, of course, like I said, the obvious combos, right? In this video, let's go into some combos. But clearly, for example, right, if you're playing as a sorcerer, this is my first character. He's a hot sorcerer guy with long hair. Okay, do this thing here. I'm play my sorcerer. Okay, when I'm playing my Sorc, right? For example, if you play Sorcer Paladin, which I think is a pretty cool multiclass, but anyway, it works pretty well. Why does it work well? Because Sorcerer, right, they live on charisma, right? It throws back with charisma, same thing with Warlock. And then, of course, Paladin is also charisma, right? So there's some very, very obvious things. It's okay, it's much easier to be Sorc Pala than Wizard Pala, right? or vice versa, Paladin, Wizard, whatever you can point. It is much harder because you're like, well, I need intelligence to be a Wizard, but I want to maximize my charisma, right? But if you're a Warlock or Sorcerer, you have much easier, right? Similar thing with other classes, of course. If you're playing a Dexterity class, the most obvious combo is, of course, Rogue, right? You're playing the Rogue, and then you pick the Ranger, obviously, like 2 Dexterity based. You can also be, for example, you can be a Monk, Rogue, or whatever, right? So that's the most obvious thing. I really don't think in this game that it opens up for playing multiclass in like a very wide variety. Makes any sense? For example, then again the Rogue, right? Mostly a Dexterity-based class. Then you play, I don't know, the Cleric or something. Yeah, it's kind of hard to like pull those things off, right? Where you need a class that has a completely different stat. So most multi-classes should be with the same main stat, right? But anyway, let's go into what I call the level threshold. So what I think is important here, right, is to first of all understand level thresholds. So you can multi-class at any given level, right? Immediately at level 2 if you want to. But that's a pretty terrible idea. What you rather want to do, right, is that you want to get level 5 if you're playing as here a Paladin or a Barbarian and so on. All the physical classes. Because at level 5, you are getting the double attack. As you can see now, right? Now I'm doing the level 5 jump. You get the extra attack. So when you're playing Paladin, Barbarian and so on, level 5 is this huge concept, right? Which you basically get like double damage, like more or less, right? It's a massive change, right? So especially when you're playing this game and you're leveling, right? You're adventuring. I'm talking about max level. I'm talking about, when you're creating a character, you're playing through Baldur's Gate 3. Getting to level 5 is a massive damage boost, right? For, again, the physical guys, right? Massive boost. But when you then get to level 6, it's actually pretty terrible. So now I'm getting extra attack, right? Bam. I am much stronger now as a Paladin. But now, when I get to level 6, it's actually kind of like, I get to aura. This is like a much weaker level, right? So obviously, it's called the level 5 rule, right? Now, if you multi-class, you're gonna get so much more benefit, right? If I multi-class from the 5, this is the level 6 thing, right? Let's take whatever. Let's say I go Cleric, right? So Paladin, Healing, Cleric, yeah. This is a much stronger level. So what I'm saying is that if you wanna min-max, right? During leveling up in the game, yeah. Min-maxing by going to level 5 as a Paladin and then swapping over, right? It is so much stronger. So this concept here, right? Like level 2, level 5. As a Paladin with whatever, right? It's much stronger than level 6 Paladin. The next rule I have then, right, is the level 3 cutoff, right? So as I mentioned, right, level 5 thing is massive for the physical characters. But level 3 is a big level for anyone, right? But it's not as big as level 5 because 2 attacks is just so massive. But if you're gonna really do an early multi-class thing, right? Yeah, then you get level 3. Yeah, level 3, and this is for any class, right? For any class, more or less, the level 3 is also a big cutoff. It's like, okay, I get a lot of passes here, right? And of course, likewise, if you want to be then, now you're a level 5 Paladin, right? And you want a multi-class, yes, going like 5-3. So again, I'm not talking full build, I'm talking during the play, right? 5-3, of course, is the natural. Maybe now I should get back in leveling Paladin. Right? Now, lastly, when it comes to leveling stuff and so on, I want to bring up Fighter Level 2. So Fighter Level 2 is this very specific thing, and that's where you're going to see a lot of builds, right? So again, it's a guide video I just picking here. You're going to see a lot of guides saying that, well, like 2 Fighter, 10 Wizard, right? Or Wizard 10 or whatever. You're going to see Sorc 10, Fighter 2 and so on, right? Of course, because of action surge, right? Fighters, I don't think Fighters are a very good class, right? I talk about my videos. I don't think Fighters are, again, they're pretty weak, I think. But I have to, of course, say that, well, specifically, Fighter 2, yeah. When you get to level 2 in Fighter, this is like the best class in the game for 2 levels, right? So again, then I guess my point is that you're gonna see a lot of builds, right? Like I mentioned, Sorcerers, Warlock, Wizard, especially those spellcasters, but also, you know, Paladin, whatever, right? You're gonna see a lot of builds where you're like, well, if I can take action surge, I get a double action, so I can be a Wizard, and I can do like bam, bam, right there. I can do 2 high-level spells on the same time, and I can combo them. So this is why you're gonna see that the Fighter level 2 is just a big deal for a bunch of classes. But actually, like I said, I don't think Fighter 2 is particularly good for like the Paladin or the Barbarian or whatever. Not saying that you can't combine, of course, like Barbarian Fighter, so on, obviously you can. But it's like, again, the Fighter 2 thing is more for spellcasters, right? Where, for example, a Paladin, like Paladin 12, right? Like a pure Paladin, it's actually probably more beneficial almost all the time than being like 10 Paladin 2 Fighter, right? Where, again, then a Wizard 10 or a Fighter 2 is probably stronger actually than like a Wizard 12, right? So it's more like a, yeah, this ability is more for the spellcaster actually, right? Main things, right? It is when you get your level 3 spell and it's when you get your level 4 spell, right? Now, of course, these level aren't corresponding to like level 3 and so on. So it isn't easy as remembering, okay, level 3, I guess, I don't know, is higher levels, right? But I think that's kind of where I feel the cutoff is, then again, right, for spellcasters. Because, let's look at example, the Cleric. So when you're Cleric, you're getting Spirit Guardian, right? Very good spell. Everyone loves it, you know, you throw these angels around yourself. When I play Shadow Heart, that's obviously kind of like, you know, what... the spell I use, yeah, Spirit Guardian all the time, basically, right? It's a very, very powerful spell, especially in Act 2. A lot of undeads and so on, right? So you're throwing around that Spirit, Holy Radiant Magic around you, very, very potent, right? So of course then it's a massive upgrade at that level when you get level 3 spells. Okay, so this here is a table of levels for spells, right? Now, I haven't made this myself, but I believe it's correct. It looks pretty correct here. So, whatever, I'm caveat if it's wrong then. But basically, right, look at this list here. It's very important to understand multiclassing, right, for spellcasters. So, at level 5, right, you get the level 3 spell. Similar to the physical guys, they get their, you know, like double attack, right? So quite a big thing, right? Next level, you get another level 3 spell. Obviously, not as big as a level, because you already have one, right? But definitely a much better level. Come back to what I said earlier in the video, right? It's a much better level as a spellcaster, get to level 6, than, for example, Barbarian, right? Barbarian level 6 is like very meh, right? Very, very meh. But if you're a spellcaster, level 6 is, okay, it's not a level 3 spell, not as big, but still much better, right? Then, of course, the next level 7, quite, I think, arguably the biggest level, I think, probably, for a long time in spellcasters. So getting your first level 4 spell, that's very powerful. Getting 2 level 4 spells, not at all as powerful, level 7 and level 8, no, because your first level 4 spell, that can be like a really powerful summoning, right? That you can usually have for like more than one battle, if you summon like a druid, or if you're the, whatever, yeah, point. Like if you do with summoning, you can either have the Dryad, but you can also summon the 2 elementals. They will last, right, for like more than one battle. So that's like first level 4 spell, very big. Second level 4 spell, likewise earlier, not as big, right? So you get my point. When you're a spellcaster, I think multiclassing is not as valuable, right? Because you keep getting more, bigger difference, right? Every time you level up, right? So now you're level 9, you get your next, and then eventually level 12, right? But yeah, like when you get those things, right? And I guess a big point I'm making, I suppose, is that I do think that a lot of spellcasters are not necessarily as all benefiting getting like your max level as Barbarian is as powerful as, again, the max level Wizard or Cleric or whatever, right? That being said, though, I think Barbarian is pretty good max level. I think it's one of the better physical classes, right? Where I guess the best example would be Rogue and Ranger. They are both pretty meh, at the power scaling, right? Min-maxing or whatever, at max level. But of course, if you have the classic build, right? The Gloomstalker, Assassin, Rogue, Ranger thing. I mean, if there's any multi-class hit that's obvious, right? Is of course the Rogue and the Ranger. I'll come soon to sort of my favorites, right? But Rogue, Ranger, very powerful, right? And neither of those two classes, I would say, has like a very powerful level 12 thing, where it's much better to multi-class, right? So, yeah, generally speaking, I think spellcasters, better, right? If you get to level 12, and I can see here, better changes, right, when you get up there, when you level up and so on too. Doesn't feel very worthwhile, in my opinion, right? If you're like a sorcerer, wizard or whatever, right? To be like, oh, I'm gonna multi-class now here. Nah, I don't think it's very worthwhile, because you'd rather have your next power. That being said, though, you can see here in the end of the game, I agree with you. I don't think it's very more powerful if you're like 9, 10, 11, right? Because you get one more level 5, whatever, yeah. Not as powerful. That's clearly like a spellcaster weakness here, where you just keep getting a little more spells. So that's kind of where you want to multi-spec, right? And for example, one common combo is the fighter, right? So fighter 2, Wizard 10, right? So you get like, so if you get here, you get into Fighter instead, might be better. That being said though, like Fighter 1 isn't very useful as a Wizard, so like 10-1 isn't very useful. Probably would rather get another Whisper, but you know, so it's a little bit like that, right? But I think, yeah, for a spellcaster, not as important, right? Definitely not. And then I guess I should lastly point out that I don't see the Bard as a spellcaster. I know Bard are mostly spell, but you know what I mean. You can be Bard fighter, you can be Bard spellcaster. I think Bard are pretty good at multiclassing, definitely. Oh yeah, lastly, talking about spellcasters, Druid. I guess I say Druid as a spellcaster. They can fight in animal form. Druid benefits very little from multiclassing because, likewise, you know, with the Cleric or whatever, right, they get better spells at level 4, you know, and so on, level 4, 5, and so on. But the Druid also benefits from becoming an animal is based purely on your Druid level. The animal form scales purely on Druid level, not your total level, right? So yeah, if you multiclass into a Druid, you get a pretty meh level health and so on. So that's a big drawback. And again, they also follow, you know, basically this like, you know, better spells. So Druid is probably the worst multiclass thing to do, generally speaking. But also because Druid can do a bit of everything anyway, right? So it's like a natural thing of why would you multiclass a Druid. That being said though, let's talk about some of my favorite multiclass builds, right? And then my next video, or my next multiclass tier list video, we're going into more in depth, but like a very brief, some of my favorites. Okay, let's just kind of cover some of my favorite multiclasses, or rather, a guiding hand, right? As I mentioned earlier in the video, I don't want to just give you like, this is the best to do this thing. I rather say, well, this thing kind of works together, so, you know, do that if you want to do that, right? And obviously, the game isn't like insanely hard, but the game is pretty hard on Tactician. So I'm not gonna be just like, oh, this is terrible. There are definitely, I say it here, there are multiclasses that doesn't work at all, right? And I said it earlier too, like, this is really crap, right? So the one I'm telling you now, I would say are playable, right? But and then we rank them in another video, we can actually rank them. But obviously then for Druid, like I said, right, Druid multiclassing is pretty bad. You don't get much benefit from that, but the very obvious combo is the Barbarian, right? You know, if you play Barbarian, then you pick Druid, that is a very good combo because how I say it, right? Some people complaining about doing this game because when you transform into an animal, the Druid cannot use spells, right? It's a little bit different in modern games or whatever, right? But in this game, you as an animal, you can only fight, right? You have maybe some skills like the Owl Break and like Owl Flight or whatever, which is actually pretty powerful, but you don't have that many skills. So obviously, if you play Barbarian and you go into a Frenzy or a Rage or whatever, right, depending on your Barbarian build, but usually you play the Frenzy Barbarian, right? So you play the Frenzy Barbarian and you get Frenzied State, you basically have to use, you know, DPS, right, by physical damage. That of course is perfect fitting for the animal form. So it is one combo with Druid that's like an obvious multiclass. Yeah, more or less every other combo I rather used to be a max level Druid, right? And then we have the Ranger and the Rogue, right? You know, it's just an obvious combo. It's just 30. Every time about the Gloom Stalker, yeah. I mean, what can I say? I said it earlier again, right? It's just the most obvious thing ever, yeah. They have different versions of it, but I mean, of course, the Ranger and the Rogue are both dexterity. I said several times, right? But when you have multiclass, you should preferably multiclass with the same stat, right? Like the same main primary stat. You can see the star up here, right? Look at the game, you see like your, you know, primary ability, right? Your primary stats. So obviously, generally speaking, I said several times, right? But of course, the best multi, not the best, but the most multi that work are gonna have the same multiclass. And you can even go in further, right? You can have like Ranger, Rogue, Monk can be a thing and so on, right? Because you can have even 3 classes, right? But again, of course, you basically necessarily want to have the same stat, right? And I think that it reminds me of, I don't know, Magic or something, you know, with multicoloring. It's kind of like, well, you know, if you play like 3 colors in Magic, like the Shard of Alar, whatever it's called, that block, you kind of want to have, you know, like a triple hybrid thing. So if you have a card that's like fire red, right, like mountain forest, right, like green red, and then you have another card that is also like green white, then if you also have white red, you know, that's easier to play, right, than having like something else. So yeah, if you can combine them like that, so you get like a Venn diagram, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, you know what a Venn diagram is? Thing here, guys, is a Venn diagram. You get my point, right? I hope you get my point, you know? Like, you wanna have, if you play a 3-color Magic or whatever, right, in some kind of card game, or similar gameplay, right, mathematically speaking, of course you wanna have intersection, right, between the two classes. Then you want to have the next one. I mean, you obviously want to have the dark blue thing, right? You want to have all the mana thing meeting in the middle, right? So you play like, again, if you play green, white, red, you want to have cards that are like green, red, white, red, you know, and so on. So they can mix together, right? So depending on the mana you draw, right, because it's mathematically like you want to have a good curve and so on, is to play the cards, right? And that's kind of how, obviously, I would say this in Baldur's Gate 3 as well, where, yeah, like Rogue, Ranger obviously works, same in D&D, Monk, Rogue works, right, it's dexterity based, obviously, like Fight the Barbarian works, because it's like strength based, right? So those are the dexterity classes, the obvious stat things, right? And what more would I mention here briefly? Again, this is the brief ending, right? But I guess, like I mentioned, Paladin and Sorc and Paladin Warlock is pretty good because of charisma rates. But actually, a fun class to play is Paladin Barb, guys. You know, if you wanna be, if you wanna be super face bad, like, oh, I wanna win every check ever in the game. Obviously, I mean, yeah, I haven't seen people mention that in many. I see some, of course, I checked out some videos, right? Haven't seen people mention that. But if you wanna be ridiculously good at, oh, I'm gonna do everything in, you know, NPC wise, right? The actual one most obvious combo is actually playing a Barb Paladin. Paladin, right? Like Paladin Sorc is good, to some extent, like Paladin Warlock and so on. Obviously, Barb also then can combine with those, right? Because again, it has charismatic, right? So that, honestly, I think the game is a little bit like that. When you really feel how the classes, I keep saying it, right? The classes that are based on charisma, right, are so easier to combine, right? Where it feels like if I'm playing the wizard, I can't really combine anything because obviously the wizard, right, it has intelligence, and then suddenly you feel like, what can I combine with that? I guess it's like, not rogue, not monk, you know, no, maybe not that, maybe that's like wisdom. Yeah, I think it's pretty much that, like, because you only have the wizard that's based on intelligence. This is weird monk thing though, because monk has like armor based on wisdom, so you can be like, yeah, like monk cleric, you can bring it up. A monk can scale on their wisdom, right, for the armor, and also you can heal with the cleric. So one build is like, I think it's like 210 or something when you play monk, but you can have different versions, basically how much, you know, stat you want to have for damage, right, or support or whatever. But basically, monk cleric is very hard to kill them because, yeah, you get in the monk passive, right, scale some wisdom, and you basically heal and the tank, yeah. So you're like an evasion, super high armor evasion tank, right, and you scale on wisdom for healing as well as armor, basically, yeah. Like the more wisdom you have, right, the more you heal, the more you better spells you have, but you also avoid more damage. That actually is a pretty good combo, but I don't know if I recommend it for the player. I would say Shadowheart can definitely go into that. Yeah, that's probably what I would say for in this game particularly. Yeah, Shadowheart definitely could benefit from that. If you multiclass, I would say after you get your level 4 spells, you can start multiclassing into monk. That's very useful if you want to tank with her then. Definitely. What more is like thinking in my head? I already mentioned a bunch of different fighter 2, right? Of course. You also have the other, but I read this is bugged, but you also have, of course, the Monk Barbarian. It's a classic one, similar to Monk here. Yeah, so you play Monk Barbarian, right? Both of them have, you know, unarmed, right? So you have, you know, no clothes on you, right? So you get more armor, and they both have a passive for that, and that should stack. But I think I read some Reddit posts that, because I was reading about that, yeah, when I started playing the game, and people were like, because I'm playing Monk on my third playthrough. So that was like my natural in my head. I was like, oh, I'm gonna play Monk Barbarian, right, you know? So the Monk, and then I multi-set into Barbarian, you know, classic, you know, unarmed master and having no armor and so on. That's like a no-brainer. But then I read that was bugged. So I don't know, yeah, because I feel it's weird. So in my experience, I think it's bugged too, because that's what I tried in my third playthrough, like Monk Barbarian, half orc, Monk Barbarian, whatever, and min-max nav with, of course, the half orcs passive and so on, right? You know, if you miss, you get so on. But it felt like it didn't work. It felt like I didn't get the stats that I expected to get, right, from the armor and so on. And then I googled that, and people were like, "Nah, it seems to be buggy or something." So, but otherwise, yeah, I think from a critical standpoint, Monk Barbarian should be a good combo, right? Because it's a classic unarmed, no armor combo. But anyway, guys, that's the video. Hope you guys liked it. Please subscribe, press the like button. So in the next video, multi-classes, we're gonna talk about my favorites, right? The best one, and rank them and so on. And the idea I have, right, is that we're gonna have 3 multi-classes per class, right? Of course, you can have way more combos than 3, obviously, like 12 or more, because you can have triple multi-classes. However, like I said here, right, I don't see that much point of, like, you know, ranking. Oh, you can play Barbarian Bard, you can play Barbarian Cleric, you can play Barbarian Druid, you know, and going over all of them, right? I don't think that's very useful, because obviously, like I said here, most of these combos are actually pretty bad, right? So it's more like I said with Druid. I think Druid only has like maybe 1 or 2 good multi-classes, right? Most of them the Barbarian. Like, so you're very spoiled on that. But we get my point. I don't think it's useful, like, ranking, you know, the Druid's best multi-classes, which basically only have like 3 good ones, you know, if even that, right? So not very useful. Now, that being said, though, some classes do have more than, I guess, 3 good multi-classes, so I might have a few extra for that. I don't know, but something like that, right? I think that's more useful. I think it's more, you know, purposely, right? Discussing different builds, discussing different multi-classes, right? In that sense, and basically saying that, well, yeah, and it's order 10 or crap, right? It's like, yes, you can play, I don't know, Druid Ranger, that's pretty bad. You can play Druid Wizard, that's also pretty bad. Druid Cleric, I guess, is also somewhat useful as a healer supporter, yeah. So Druid Barbarian, Druid Cleric, that's basically it, right? Maybe something else I'm thinking about now. Get my point. Like, talking about Druid Rogue or something, it's not very useful. so I think that's gonna be a better video where we like, okay, we look at all the different multi-classes, but basically, like, 80% of them are crap, so we just ignore them. Right? Way more useful. Anyway, guys, see you guys, have a great day.